So project life cycles. So what does all this mean to you? I know we briefed on this morning, but I just want to make sure that we're still focused on what the end result of all of this is for, right? Because the last thing I would want if I were you to be sitting in an audience and sitting there going, what do I care? Why does this matter? Why are you telling me this? Well, the answer is we're really giving you all the answers to the test before you go out there, right? We didn't always do a workshop like this. This workshop is only the third annual workshop. And the reason why we started this annual workshop is because we had our military units going out to the initial planning meeting with really no clue what they were walking into, right? And being thrown into these situations without having any of the answers. And it was really not only uncomfortable, but it just wasn't really helping us in success, right? We wanted to be successful, and we want to give you the most that we can possibly give you before you get there, okay? So we're definitely giving you all the answers before you have to do this. Everything you're learning here, you will come across, I promise you, in one way, shape, or form or another. You recently had that communications brief before you went to lunch. And I didn't get a chance to talk to you then, but oddly enough, was this last year or the year before? Major DeVoe, I'm calling you out. Did this happen last year or the year before? You know what I'm talking about. My story that I'm about to say.
Say it again?
That we ran into the guy at lunch. Okay, so apparently I don't even know my own years anymore. Okay, so year before. Somebody knows my life better than I do. Yeah, thank you. Okay. So 2 years ago at this very same conference, I went out to lunch with Major DeVoe and another public affairs officer that was at the workshop. And on our way back from lunch, we were all three in our uniforms, and we had a guy like yell at us from, across the street, and I swear he was down a quarter of a mile, and he came running at us. Running. Hey, you. And he really wanted to talk to us. So we turned around, and we thought he was just going to ask us like what we're doing, right? Because we're at Tyson's Corner. There's not a strong military presence out in the community over here, which is certainly going to be very similar in every single one of your projects. You guys are going into communities where they don't have people in uniform all the time, going to the grocery store or on the community out of a base. So he came running up at us, and he's like, hey, I'm having trouble with my friends right now, and I need to get your opinion on something, because we don't agree. Okay, I don't agree with my friends, they don't agree with me, and I want to know your opinion. I'm like, okay, what's up? What do you think about Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem? And yeah, no joke. So, I was lucky because I'm not a public affairs officer by trade, and I happened to be with two that were. So it was very easy for me to go, what do you guys think? And that was really helpful for me. But how often are we out there with public affairs officers right next to us? Like, probably never, right? Okay. So lucky for me, Major DeVoe was there. And Major DeVoe gave an excellent answer. I don't even remember it anymore because I was just praising God at that moment.
It was excellent, though.
But it was an excellent answer, nonetheless. It was perfect, beyond measure. But those things are going to happen, is what I'm trying to say. All of your missions, with maybe just a few, they've seen a little bit of a military presence in the past. Even if we're there, a second time, you're still coming across new people in the community that don't see people in uniform every single day. And they don't see a difference in our uniforms. Right?
We're all Army people.
We're all Army people. I was just going to say that, right? And then when you say, oh, no, I'm not in the Army, I'm an airman, I'm in the Air Force, they go, oh, so what plane do you fly? I'm like,
I'm in the Army.
Not that cool. So it's Army. So it doesn't even matter what uniform you're wearing. You are a military member, and that's all they care about. They're looking at you. They're going to ask you questions. They think you represent the president. They think you represent everything that is the Department of Defense. And you're going to get questions leading along those lines, okay? So just think back to that communications message. Know that you're always there. Listen to what we're telling you, because we're really trying to give you the answers before that you're ever put in these positions. Because I promise you, you will be put in these positions. Whether you're going out to lunch, during a planning meeting, you're going to go to, I don't know, Taco Bell, Arby's. People are going to be like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Why do we see 20 people in uniform walking around? So you need to be prepared to speak to why you're here without making the front page of the newspaper tomorrow in a negative light. Preferably, we prefer the positive pieces, right? So that's the public affairs piece, but why are you here otherwise? Obviously, because we want you to be as successful as every other mission is in the past, right? We want to make sure that you guys have the tools that you need to be successful. We don't want you in the middle of Alaska feeling all alone because you don't know where your barge of equipment is and you don't know how to feed people because things have gone wrong. We're trying to give you all those answers ahead of time, okay? That's why we do this workshop. All right, so now that you're all reinvigorated and you're excited to learn all there is to learn about IRT in the next hour, we're going to go through project life cycles. All right. Maybe. If I know how to work this. Manny, help me. Thank you. We can hit the slide too if you. I know. First it's a microphone, then it's the slideshow. If I remembered my first slide, I just start talking to it now, but well, while we're waiting for that, I'm sure it has something to do with starting, what is every...
Oh, yeah. Over all timelines.
Oh, I was just going to start briefing the timeline, too. Oh, magic, guys. Okay, you saw this timeline already, right? Every IRT begins with a... Ooh,
This
yeah.
will give you the diabetes.
Now you're going to have to see who says it the fastest. And then after the after the community application, you have a. Oh, who said that? Somebody over here. Oh, Mitch. Really? Okay. Then we get to this point after we've selected units, right? Now we're here, right? So we've already talked through a lot of this life cycle. And that's really as deep as we're going to get into the September 30th community application to this point, because the rest is a lot of nitnoid information. They've got the, one thing we will talk about, I got this question a little bit earlier, is the non-competition. So it's part of the community application, right? And part of that piece is they have to submit advertisements to the local newspaper, 2 advertisements, just saying what they're intending to do. So, hi, I'm this entity, and I intend to partner with the Department of Defense to execute this project and provide these services. If you have any issues with that, come forward now. And then they have 30 days for people to come forward and say, hey, no, I want to do that. And then they have those 30 days to adjudicate any issues. So in the engineering world, if it's road paving, sometimes we have a contractor going, hey, no, I wanted to pave that road. And I've been telling you guys I want to pave that road all the time. Oh, okay, great. Can you do that for just the cost of the materials? And they're like, oh, yeah, no, probably can't, right? So then it's not an issue because it's not competing anymore. For the medical side of the house, you might have an optometrist or a dentist that is local and like, hey, no, if they're handing out, I almost said free. Where's Kelly? Sorry. No cost dental or optometry care. I know, right? Out of all the people in the world. They're going to take business away from me. Well, no, actually, we're actually generating referrals for you because we're going to make sure that your name's on the referral list. People who never would have gone to the eye doctor are now going to realize that they need better vision. They get their no-cost pair of glasses, and all of a sudden they can see, and then they break their glasses like we all do, and then all of a sudden they have to go see an optometrist, right? Same with dental, right? A lot of people like to get their teeth pulled because they want to get dentures. So we usually are generating business for all these entities. Even on engineering side, right? Somebody needs to maintain after we're gone, right? So the maintenance and repair. Any questions on the non-compete? Just want to make sure you guys all heard that. So remember, all good questions are good for the entire group, so don't feel like you need to hold them in. All right, so we already saw these roles and responsibilities. So we're going to start talking about the difference between a program manager. You've heard program manager, you've heard project manager, you've heard mission OIC. Some of you are like, I think I'm a support planner, maybe a lead unit planner. I don't really know what I am. So we're going to just go briefly through some of these roles and responsibilities so you can understand where you fit into these missions at this point in time, okay? I say at this point in time because once you actually start your planning, you're going to start putting together a command structure, right? And we'll get into that a little bit here too. So program manager, you met your 6 program managers this morning. Your program managers introduced you to their teams. Usually when we have a project manager, it's a medical and a CE project manager. And then we have our mission OICs, AOICs, lead unit planner versus support unit planner. Comes down to, okay, if you're the Army Reserve and you're leading this mission, because what you can't do is you can't have 3 service components leading a mission. Do I even need to explain why? Actually, anybody have a good guess? I'm sure the Marine Corps has something to say. I'm just kidding. So we can't have multiple service components leading a mission because then we have, too many chefs in the kitchen, essentially, right? We need to be able to have somebody that maintains that command and control element, that funnels the communication, etc. Make sense? Okay, so that's where the lead versus support unit comes in. All right, so you've got your program manager, right? Mike, I didn't realize I put a picture of you up there. Yeah, all right. So, so your program manager has, let's say, anywhere from 4 to 10 projects. CE, medical, aerial spray, dive, transportation, you name it. It's in all sorts of different specialties. So we're only using 4 up here because that's the only cool pictures I could find yesterday. So we've got Hawaii, we've got Mississippi, we've got Alaska, and we've got Georgia. Well, the program manager very quickly gets overwhelmed, right? How am I going to manage all these 4 projects all over the place? It's impossible, right? So what does the program manager do? They get an idea. They're like, you know what? I'm going to become the world's best boss and hire some project managers, right? I'm going to hire a team to help me do this. So their project managers now go, okay, I've got the medical missions, I've got the CE missions, maybe you have a cyber guy, I don't know. Your wish is my command, right? It's only limited by the imagination. Maybe you need multiple project managers for CE or medical, just depends on how many projects you have, right? But then the project managers very quickly get overwhelmed. And they go, well, how am I going to manage these different projects across the country from each other, right? So they get mission OICs. Some of them may be in the room right now. I may have stolen these pictures, by the way. And those mission OICs are going to be like the main point of contact, right? So you saw it, OSD, program manager to project manager now has this mission OIC for all their projects that they're managing, and that's going to be their primary communicator on everything that is that mission, right? They're going to go through them. Because why would we want to go to 10 people in one mission when we could just go to 1, right? It streamlines communication, right? All right, so we have those mission OICs, and then the mission OIC quickly gets overwhelmed, right? Captain White, Lieutenant Brooks? I almost put one of your guys' pictures up there, but I decided I'd be nice. So they formulate their own team, right?
Superhero.
So they assign a mission AOIC, mission NCOIC, and then they have their other unit planners, and then they start developing their org chart at the planning meeting. So you have a joint command and control element, right? And I stress joint because what you don't want to do is have a C2. Let's just pretend that it's an Air Force Reserve-led mission. I won't pick on the Army this time. But if you only have Air Force Reserve personnel in the command, in the C2, you're making decisions for other service components, and you have no idea how it may affect that service component, right? One example was in Alaska. It was a medical mission. We had 17 different sites in Alaska that year. This was many years ago. 17 different sites, and they made a decision that they were going to keep 2 or 3 of the sites in place, even though we knew there was bad weather coming in, and if we didn't get them out, there was a potential that we weren't going to get them out at all for a week, and it was the very end of the mission, okay? They made that decision without consulting any of the other service components, because if they would have consulted the other service components, they would have found out that there was KC 135 coming in for at least 20 of them that were out at those sites. And I don't know if any of you know much about military airlift, but that's not a negotiable thing at that point. They're not going to just be like, oh yeah, hey, we'll wait a couple extra days. It's cool. Unless they want to. I mean, then they'll do crazy things, right? But but for the most part, that's not something that's just really easy, right? So it's very important that it's joint service, and we're really consulting everybody in the room, right? Because we don't want to make decisions that are going to negatively impact our brothers and sisters in arms. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right. Okay, so something else to really understand. So another visual. You've got your program manager. Notice this is you again, Matt. You're welcome. He's in Georgia, okay? And let's say we're doing the flagship mission in Mississippi, okay? So this is an example of this year. So the PM's in Georgia. Your OIC, thankfully, is coming from Georgia. That actually rarely happens. In fact, we've got the OIC for Georgia Medical coming from Oregon. And let's see, the OIC for Hawaii coming from, Colonel Sherman, where are you from? Arkansas. So more often than not, we're many, many states away, right? Then you have your NCOIC coming from New England. I say New England.
He's hard to understand
New England
for real.
states-ish. You can tell by his accent. You got a unit coming from California, a unit coming from Colorado. Okay, so I started fudging a little bit on this, but it's the general idea. But units coming from literally all over the United States at this point, right? All service components, all over the United States, all coming into Mississippi with very little knowledge of Mississippi, other than the fact that we've been there for a few years. But a lot of these missions, it's our first time there. So you can get a picture of how confusing this can already become, right? And why communication is 100% key. And why this workshop is absolutely imperative prior to even going into your initial planning meeting. And now you know why we have 3 planning meetings, right? Is all this starting to kind of make sense as to why we do all this and why this matters to you? All right. All right, so let's talk about community responsibilities. We'll go to the community application. This is important because you need to see what they're responsible for when you go in, so you're not trying to do something that they've already essentially signed up to do by applying, right? So written request for support, that was in the application. Obviously for your missions, it was done a while ago. Non-competition, we discussed earlier. Liability release hold harmless agreement. Okay, so this comes in often on our missions. If, let's do a medical mission, let's say you're partnered with the Department of Public Health, okay? Well, now you need venues, right? That's community partner responsibility. So now you need to go find places that you're going to do the clinic in. So the community partner finds you a church, a community center, and a school, right? The Department of Defense did not partner with any of those 3 entities, right? So if we knock out a wall on accident, we're not going to fix it, right? That's our community partner that made that agreement with them. So we're not going out and making individual agreements. We don't have the authority to do that on behalf of the Department of Defense, but our community partner does. That's where it's a real true partnership too, right? They're going out and they're kind of putting themselves on the line to go find us these venues that they're ultimately responsible for if we don't take care of them, right? So we obviously do everything within our power to make sure that we're taking care of everywhere we are. But just know that that's a partnership with the community partner, not with us. So if anybody asks you to start signing agreements because you're using a community center, we can't do that. We would be entering into an illegal contract for the Department of Defense, right? Does that make sense? That's a big one because that happens probably 5 to 6 times in the first quarter. Yeah? A little bit of head nods? Okay. All right, I feel semi-comfortable. We're going to say that one about 3 more times till I get real good head nods. For engineering, obviously, we're operating under local permits and licenses. So that is to be provided to us by the community partners, those individuals, those licenses, right? That comes from them. Medical credentialing and privileging. If we are in a facility, that is where privileging is required. But most of the time we are not in a facility. So there is actually a law that allows DoD medical professionals to carry their licenses across state lines. All we have to do is an ICTB. We have that in writing. We let the community know. The only thing we have to do is provide them the ICTBs if they request it. But we have all those pieces of paperwork as part of the planning package. Obviously, they need to provide sustainable medical care or sustain the buildings or facilities, roadways, runways that we create when we're there, right? We're not there to just put a Band-Aid in their life. They actually have to prove to us that they can sustain what we come in and do. Because our goal isn't just to put a Band-Aid on anything. And then, of course, building materials and any
Ryan, on the
additional
medical
partners.
With
Go for
these, so what they have a lot of in the, and you can talk to this, is some places we go want their particular docs to be in that area. So that, can you talk to that a little bit? Because you're more on the medical side, but we are not allowed to bring their docs in and
Oh, yeah.
solicit care.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So what we do is we put pamphlets out for.
I call it the IRT umbrella. This actually happens on engineering, too. We kind of get a... Let me just start this off with everybody wants to do good things. Everybody has good intentions. So they want to do everything possible to make great things happen, right? I am not here to dim anybody's light. We just want to keep it legal, okay? So we call it the IRT umbrella, right? We have these partnerships, these applications that we've developed, and we have the IRT umbrella. So starting with the medical project, or even imagine your CE project under this beautiful umbrella, right? It's gorgeous, whatever color you want it to be, all right? Your clinic or your project are under that umbrella. Now, if the community wants to bring in a mental health professional or immunizations technicians and provide immunizations because they're capturing an already hard population to capture, that's okay. They just need to keep it out of your umbrella, right? They got to check out of the IRT and go get those services outside in their own umbrella, in their own other pretty umbrella, because we can't cover them, right? That's not our partnership. And if it's on our form, right, now it looks like it's an IRT piece. And what if there's complications from what happens on this umbrella? Right now, are we responsible, right? So that's similar to us entering into an agreement that we shouldn't be entering into. We don't want to dim the light and let it happen just under a different umbrella. Same with engineering projects, right? You're not going to have, it's one thing if like a general contractor is already hired for that project, but you're not going to have an outside entity come in and do work that you've signed up to do, right? Because now the government can be held liable for that work. Or potentially, right, there can be ramifications from there. Does all that make sense? So just think of your own pretty yellow polka dot umbrella when you think of it that way. All right. Is that what you were talking about? Covering? Yes?
Something we found this summer was warranty. And maybe, I don't know how you guys communicate that to the community partners, but they were worried that the contractor was not doing it and that the warranty would not be covered because we were doing that portion of the project. And I know that falls under that umbrella for us being not held liable, but maybe that's something that needs to be communicated better to our community partners, that they do have a warranted item. I don't know how we need to deal with that.
Yeah, that's good, actually. I think this might have been, well, it came up a little bit last year too, but she was talking about warranties for their work. So installation of an HVAC system, what's the warranty on that? And there is liability to the community to a point with some of that. But that's definitely a conversation to have with the community, helping them understand that we are still operating under their licenses and permits, so that warranty stands as it would with anybody else working on it. But that's great to bring up. Yes, Major Pagan?
I have a question. Back on your volunteers, why don't you hold that for just a sec? Oh, we'll bring something over. Because I didn't quite hear that was a great question.
Don't let the microphone be a deterrent to you asking questions, though. You can always write it on a postcard or note card if you want.
Yes, hi. So my question is, especially on the medical events, right? The same services that we're providing, sometimes the local providers want to also volunteer their services at the same time. So how do you tell them, have a booth outside or not, or like, for example, it's mostly with like the optometrists, right? If we don't have the ability to do eyeglasses in every site, there might be an optometrist in another one of our sites that wants to donate those services to the Ask Glass making. So could they partner with that community partner to do that at that location that is not being provided?
Yeah, absolutely. Just as long as it's clearly delineated, right? As it's a clear line, like, hey, you are not getting this from the IRT. You are getting this from such and such entity for as part of this this initiative.
And that's just the glasses, right? But if a dentist wants to come and also do dental procedures with our dentist, then that's a no, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, I want-
You got it. That's perfect. Any questions on that? Those are good questions. All right. All right, so community responsibilities. Let's move on to our military responsibilities. What are we telling the community partners that we're coming in and doing? It's very important to set expectations right off the bat with our community partners. And those expectations are very clear really from the get-go. When they apply for the mission, when we select them for a partner, we're still constantly telling them like, hey, we're doing this to the best of our ability, but it might not be everything that you're thinking it's going to be, right? So you have a camp, a 365 acre camp, 62. All right, whatever. 300-ish acre camp. You want the world, right? They're coming in, they're asking for the world. Well, this year, what we think is going to happen is we're going to be able to clear this many acres and set up a pole barn and do a culvert and start an access road. What reality might happen as we go a little bit further is we might not actually get to finishing the road because of time constraints, material constraints, equipment restraints, weather restraints, right? We might have one of the units that signed up to do it deploy, and that's a very real reality. And that's okay. Our community partners understand that. We've told them from the very beginning when they were getting ready to apply, when they applied, and even up till now. And we're going to continue that same conversation throughout, okay? So don't feel like we have to meet all of their needs all the time because that's not what this is. This is military training first, and then we're setting these expectations. So for instance, finishing work on a house isn't really a training need of our personnel. We're not going to send in a rotation of 2 weeks of engineers just to put on some molding and paint walls, right? That's not a training requirement. They know that. They're not going to ask us to do that. And if they do ask us to do that, it's okay for us to say, no, that's not a training requirement, okay? So setting those expectations early and often is very, very important with our community partners and having them understand our responsibilities as much as their own responsibilities. So we review and approve the community request as part of the military application, verify that it's required training. So again, there's going to be pieces of their applications that's not training for the units, and that's okay. We just won't do that part. Organizational eligibility determination, we talked about an eligible organization earlier. Program managers are well versed on that, and they will help any applicant through that process. Verify non-competition requirements. You can tell that's a big thing. It's also repeated in the law. That's why we repeat it here often. Communicate with the community partners. So that's really primarily the program manager's responsibility, but that is often delegated to the mission OIC after the IPM, project manager, etc. But, and you'll learn a little bit more about this tomorrow, communicating with the community partner is very important, and keeping streamlined communication with the community partner is very important. As you can imagine, when you have an initial planning meeting, and let's say there's 6 service components on it, you're going to have anywhere from 15 to 20 people at your initial planning meeting. If you have 15 to 20 people going to your one community partner, this is just an additional duty. The communities don't have funds to just hire one person on for this project and its life cycle, okay? So now you have 20 people going to them asking 20 different questions. Sometimes 10 of them are the exact same question that they already answered 10 other times. It'll be very overwhelming very, very, very fast. So that's why we are very, very careful in who communicates at what juncture with what community partner. So it starts with program manager, They delegate it as required to the mission OIC or project manager. And then from there, throughout the planning process, you'll see it start to slowly trickle out to the site OICs. Maybe it's public health to public health, or plumber to plumber, electrician to electrician. But be very, very cognizant. You're going to see some of that in our community panel on day 3. We'll talk through that with our community partners that are coming in, just so you can get a good idea of how overwhelming it can be for them. And we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to not overwhelm them more than they already will be. Plus, they think that we've got our lives all figured out. They think we're in the military. We're the ones that they call upon, right? And when there's a crisis. So they think that we know this stuff like the back of our hand. They don't know, again, they all think we're in the Army. They all think we're not only infantry, but they think that we're logistics. We know how to feed people. We know how to bed them down. We know how to drive buses. We know how to fly planes. We know how to dive. I mean, they think we know everything. And they think that every single one of us can do all of it. So understanding that can help you as you walk into the community and remind them that maybe you just have a little bit of a specialty and you have people for that, okay? All right, setting expectations, establish the budget and requesting funds, right? So that's all part of this process and the planning process. We know that the funding request is going to change at times, right? We know that what we think the project is going to be is going to change after that initial planning meeting. We know that. Then the mid-planning meeting is going to come along and all of a sudden your site's going to change, or you're going to add this because this fell through because they couldn't get building materials, right? Like this is a very dynamic process and there's change all over the place. We understand that, but it's on the individuals, the very smart individuals that were chosen to come to this conference in the room to make sure that we're managing that. And we're following the appropriate processes to make sure that we're not having to cancel a project because we didn't plan accordingly, right? So communication.
That's a perfect example on what we're going through with the budget part. So we need help from you guys. So this program was built to do it in annual tour status. So what we're running into is our funds is we may have funds this year, next year maybe more. We may not have them as much. So we're going to need the units to be more diligent in maintaining their annual tour for use within the program. There's caveats and there's things that we'll have to do, but again, it's annual tour driven. That's where we'll fund if we have to on outside things. So that's a big part of the funding.
Yep. It all comes down to money. And just don't ask for more. I'm just kidding. People do it all the time. All right. Maintain, especially you two. The ones that are laughing are the ones that came back and asked for money. That's why they're laughing. Maintain the integrity of the joint environment, right? So some of you, if you've been on IRTs before, you've definitely worked across all the service components. But you're going to learn a lot about other service components on this mission, right? Navy has a thing called Firewatch. Oh, wait, we don't have as many Navy in the room. Dang it, they're the ones that I usually talk about on this part, too, because they have all sorts of good words that I've learned over the birthing area. That's bed down. That took me a while to figure out, okay, guys? So don't be like me. But they like to do Firewatch. You just learn a lot about them, which is great, because these are the guys that you're going to deploy with, right? And the sooner you can learn about other service components, the better, because you'll be truly enlightened at what they bring to the table. It's incredible. We all live in our own little worlds until you come on these missions and you see what experts are out there. We are all very, very different by service component, very, very different. And it's, like I said, I'm going to say it again, incredible what everybody brings to the table. Because when you have these different groups put together, I mean, that's why every single mission is different, because what comes out of it is just insane. Like, you guys are going to go out and do things that you never thought you could do. So just embrace the other cultures that are coming in, embrace their civilian backgrounds, right? I mean, we have some really smart people, way smarter than me, come on these missions, and they can train everybody else on that mission. So be open and allow these things to build themselves, because you guys have a lot of experts out there across the service components, and you have a lot to learn. And then, of course, we have pre-site surveys that the military does. Primarily the program manager, sometimes it's via phone, sometimes they go out if it's a new location to just get a lay of the land. It's really hard to budget for a project if you don't know what you're up against. A good example is when we went to Hawaii a couple years ago, they were asking for us to do 3 islands, a medical mission across 3 islands. You know, it's one thing when you're like, oh yeah, okay, 3 islands, whatever. But when you realize that there's like barely a charter plane that goes into one island, you can't access it by water, which is strange because it's an island. And then this other one has just tiny, tiny town. And you want to bring 100 people, like you can't even get food there very easily. So you find that there's a lot of logistical challenges to work through when you get out there at 2 p.m. Any other stuff for military application? Okay. So now, today moving forward, all that stuff has already happened that we just talked through. It's important for you to know it because I don't want you recreating the wheel. Don't go out there and just try to restart everything that's already been done because now you're just wasting time, right? Go out and do great things forward for now. This is a very rough draft timeline because every mission is going to be a tiny bit different. No matter what, we try to get the initial planning meetings done in the first quarter. That way we have time to adjust some of our funding pieces because that initial planning meeting is really going to help show you, that funding piece. January through April, we start doing the mid-planning meetings and then even some of the final planning meetings because some of these projects start as early as April. Sometimes they're even in March. But the primary execution time frame is April through August. We don't go into September if we can completely avoid it because of end-of-year funds, right? And plus, we have to train the next year's personnel in September. So you'll have ADMON come in, equipment arrival, then your mission start, DV day, end the mission, and then don't ever forget your after-action report. Ever. Any military operation ever. Everybody has to do an AAR. What you're going to see is there's not much difference in this than real-world operations, right? The only thing that you have here that you don't necessarily have in deployment and or domestic operations response is planning, right? You guys get like 9 months to plan these bad boys out. Okay, maybe not 9 months, 6 months-ish, 7, 6. That's a lot of time. Imagine going into a deployment and having 0 time, right? So might as well hone and refine your skills today because you don't know where tomorrow is going to bring you, right? So use this time very wisely as you plan your adventures. So the initial planning meeting. It is in the region that the mission's going to be, right? You need to actually get eyes on. Like I said, there's challenges that you didn't even realize exist, even when you're in Hawaii, when you're in Alaska, Florida, Puerto Rico. I mean, we're talking mountainous regions in Missouri. Really limited cell service, very limited cell service, which means you probably need a comm package so you can start communicating with your sites, right? You're going to find things out when you're on the ground that you wouldn't have known by just Googling it or relying on word of mouth. Who needs to be there? Obviously the mission OIC, the unit planners, you, service project program managers, they'll get you started, and then of course your community partner. All right, what do you need to do? I'm not going to read all this. Totally not going to read it all. But what's good is we have checklists, we have PowerPoints, we have all sorts of really cool tools that you'll see tomorrow to help you get through and meet all these expectations of the initial planning meeting. Sorry. Excuse me. The biggest thing for the IPM that often gets lost, and this is another reason why we're training you guys here today, because your job, if you get anything out of this workshop, take this one tasker that I give you, go back to your unit and figure out 2 things. 1, what are your training objectives? And do not come back and say you don't have any, because then you shouldn't be on an IRT, okay? You should have training objectives. What do you need to train on this year? How you figure that out is totally on you. We're in 6 different service components. We manage our training requirements all differently. But go back to your command, whether it's mission essential task listings, whether it's collective training requirements, individual training requirements. If you're medical and you need ACLS, BLS, TNCC, whatever it is, write it out, okay? And you're gonna go, it's only a 2-week mission. How on earth can I do a 1-week ATLS class? We did it in Savannah. We partnered with the local hospital and we got it done. That's what this is for. Or, I'm in an engineering unit. We need our weapons qualification training. Why would I bring that to IRT? Because we did it. We did it in Hawaii this last year. If you have a training requirement, we are here to set up your 2 weeks of annual training, whatever it is that you need. These dollars are to set up your 2 weeks of annual training, okay? So if you bring that to the IPM, we have lots of time to figure it out. If you come to the final planning meeting, which is only 45 to 60 days out, sometimes less, it is going to be nearly impossible to set up that training requirement for you. Or if you just show up on the ground and be like, well, can we just throw together a BLS class? Is that cool? Because my commander said I need it. It's not going to work, right? So plan it at the IPM. That's the whole reason this is what we're here for. The IPM, you need to bring your training objectives because that is what is going to build the whole program, the whole mission, all right? Everybody's training will build the mission from there, along with the basics of what we have. Any questions on that? That's the number one. So when we ask you at the initial planning meeting what your unit training objectives for are, you should definitely have an answer, right? The second thing would be to start collecting who you intend to bring, right? You signed up for this for a reason. You have a pretty good idea of who you're requiring to bring, whether it's the whole unit, whether it's a certain amount of personnel. The more you know when you come into that initial planning meeting, the quicker you guys can plan and move on. And we've had, it was, I think, March this year with some of the missions that we still didn't even have a final manning document, or at least a very close to final manning document. You can't look for shortfalls in that amount of time. It's very difficult because we're talking money here, right? So it's not like we can publish in 2 months and find 10 dentists for you, right? Or figure that out in 30 days, plus get them money, advertise, get them money, and then get them out there, right? Same with structures, electricians, plumbers, right? If you need it, you need to identify that early in the process. So the reason why you all are here is because you're representing your units and you're going to be ready at the IPM to make it a successful mission early on. Any questions on that? I get a lot of head nods from the mission OIC, so I know I'm saying the right things. I just need to make sure you all are hearing it. All right. Are we all tired? Yeah? All right. Okay. So the site surveys, you'll go on site surveys at your IPM. You'll look at the site locations, whether it's for medical sites or the engineering site. Sometimes it's multiple sites for engineering, but more often than not, it's one large site. We have checklists for site surveys because, again, not only are you actually looking for the project that you're doing, but you're looking for personnel sustainment as well. Because believe it or not, when you're bringing anywhere from 100 to 500 people to a location, you need to know how to feed them. I know that's surprising, but you want to feed them and you want to make sure they have a place to sleep. Sometimes you want to look out for their morale, preferably always, but I realize that we're not all in the Air Force, and that's cool. So they are listening. That's good. All right. And this is where you're going to start determining where any of your significant issues are. A good example was also on the Tropicare, not only where we were trying to figure out 3 different islands, the road to Hana. Who's been on the road to Hana? Okay, so a few of you guys know. Did you actually make it to Hana? A couple of you? Okay, I'm getting some thumbs up. How long did it take you to drive those 30 miles? Like 5 hours, maybe-ish? Okay, that is not something that somebody from Montana is going to know, okay? In Montana, and I know Chief Westy's out here, she can vouch for this. This is where I was raised and spent my first 10 years enlisted. But in Montana, when you're going 30 miles, it doesn't even take you 30 minutes because we don't follow any weird speed limits there. We're like at 80 plus, okay? So what do you, I don't know, 20 minutes, 25, 22? Depends on my mood, right, Chief? Okay, so When you're in Hawaii on this curvy, beautiful road to Hana, it takes you like 5 hours. So, you know, my Montana sense is not going to make sense on the road to Hana, okay? So know that. Same with Puerto Rico. Going over the mountains in Puerto Rico, we're like, oh yeah, 45 miles, no big deal. Just kidding. Add traffic in there depending on the time of day you're going. Yeah, you're never even gonna make it back. Don't even go, right? Whew. And then they have all the bars on the side of the road and you're like, do I stop? Do I go? Should I pull over? Not to drink. Okay, you guys totally have the wrong idea there. But you get the idea,
Pepsi's
right? So every terrain is very different, right? What you think you know, you probably don't, depending on where you're at. All right, the mid-planning meeting is not in the location. So all of you people going to Camp Pamalu or Tropicare, you are not going to Kauai for the mid-planning meeting. I am sorry. I know that's sad for you. But instead, you will be going to Indiana in the
Booyah.
winter.
In February.
Again, you're
Yes, that's
welcome. You can thank that guy right there. Grissom Air Reserve Base, that is our equipment site, right? Because you cannot do your jobs without equipment. We recognize that. We certainly want to help where we can. So we actually send you to see what equipment you'll be working with, whether it's medical or CE. Again, so you can plan accordingly, right? So you might, for engineering, you might need to rent equipment. Sometimes it's going to require contracts. And how long does it take to do a contract? Forever, right? Yeah, 9 months. You know, it takes a long time. So don't even think about asking for a contract the month before the mission, okay? It's just not going to happen. And yes, we do have to follow the law. So there's that.
Not everybody gotta go, not on the site, on the meat planning?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Major Pagan's trying to get out of the
All
mid-planning
30
meeting in
of you.
Indiana. She's from Puerto Rico. She's a fair weather gal. So yes, this is very specific. So, and this kind of goes back to the C2 element that you've established, right? So on the initial planning meeting, the support unit planners, the lead unit planners are coming, the mission OIC. But from there, you're going to build your chain of command, operational chain of command, right? And you'll establish an AOIC, an NCOIC, a site OIC, another site OIC, or you're establishing your duration staff. Maybe you're going to have a services, you will have a services OIC, you need to, because somebody needs to figure out how to feed people. A logistics OIC, because somebody needs to figure out what you don't know, because unless you're a logistics OIC, I'll tell you, you don't know. Transportation OIC, right? You're going to start assigning all those roles across service components. Now, if any service component, don't sign up for something you can't pay for, right? Because as being part of the leadership team, it is absolutely crucial that you're able to show up to these planning meetings. If you don't show up to one of these planning meetings and you just show up on the mission, I can tell you, you're going to be the good idea fairy, and you're going to you're not going to know anything that's happened, right? And you guys have already gone down 1,000 rabbit holes by the time you get to mission execution, right? So if somebody hasn't been there, they're going to show up and they're going to start trying to re-go down all 1,000 rabbit holes that you have since figured out, right? And it's just going to send everybody on a wild goose chase, right? So these leadership opportunities are fantastic. Just make sure that when you sign up, you're signing up for something that you can show up to, okay? What happens at the mid-planning meeting? Assets. You want to talk about that?
I sure do. You talk about this. You don't have to talk to that.
Okay. All right.
You got to put the mic up so we can hear you.
I am. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Senior Master Sergeant Deontay Houston. I actually wear 2 hats in the Air Force Reserve program. I'm the program medical program manager, and I'm also the liaison between OSD and the operational level, which is you guys on the ground. So for the assets at Grissom Air Reserve Base, Senior Master Sergeant Wiltberger is in charge of those operations. However, when it comes to the mid-planning meeting, the reason why we're there so the providers can get eyes on the equipment. And everyone, what I want you to do is breathe, because we purchased brand new assets on the medical side. So the old antiquated equipment that we used for the previous fiscal years, we're not going to incorporate that in the program moving forward unless we discuss it at the program management level and then we agree to it. So we'll have new equipment, you'll have eyes on. That way your lead providers can actually see the equipment and plan moving forward. So that's the change in the program. That's why we conduct the operations at Grissom Air Reserve Base. And before I sit down, I want to introduce your Fort Dix team, because it's actually it's actually two parts. So it's not just medical equipment, it's Class A. Class A is your pharmaceuticals and supplies. So would you please stand, Lieutenant King, and also
Brand
Master
new.
Sergeant Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
And they're actually from the Army Reserve. So it's actually two hats. So now I'm actually going to turn it back over to
All right.
Captain Ryan.
And those are, so consumables is medical assets. All construction and engineering equipment and assets comes out of Grissom. So the two beautiful ladies that just stood up are primarily medical consumables. Yes, sir. You've got a microphone coming at you.
Question about the May Planning Conference being held at Indiana. So I think you are talking about the joint exercises. I mean, the joint IRT.
Correct.
But there's a one that is not joint, but we are still going to require IRT equipment. Even though it's standalone, it's not joint. Do we still have to have that May Planning Conference at Indiana?
Yes, because then that's your way of seeing all the equipment that you're gonna get, because it's likely very different than what any of your providers are used to. So at least having your lead provider, medical, dental, optometrist there, they're gonna feel much more comfortable moving into the mission, understanding how they can set up their flow. If you're using the equipment.
Correct. And to add to that, sir, if you
We
need to utilize,
timelines, too. These guys are not. Yeah, get between the lines. So
All right.
they can see your-
all right. To add to that, sir, if you're one of the standalone medical projects and you require equipment from Grissom Air Reserve Base or Class 8, that's a request that goes through your program manager, and then we'll discuss it within asset management and let you know whether it's approved that we can provide equipment or Class 8 to your mission. So it has to go through your medical program managers or your overall IRT program managers before we approve at the asset management level.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right. Final planning meeting, 45 to 60 days prior, optimally. That gives you time to, adapt to any fine tuning. We also, like I said, we have checklists for all this that you guys are going to see tomorrow. But this is just a general overview of what you can expect in an IPM, MPM, and FPM. Who needs to be there? So when you have pieces or different personnel embarking on these leadership opportunities, you know what the time requirements are going to be for them. Because obviously we're all professionals and some of us can't get away as often as others. And then our unit planners and community partners. The community partners are welcome to the MPM, but they're certainly not required. You will also start doing telecons at some point. Usually it kind of starts between the IPM and MPM just as syncing, and then they increase in intensity throughout, and you'll get some of the, again, that fine tuning tomorrow during the deep dive sessions. All right, and you're just fine tuning at the final planning meeting. One thing I jumped over during the IPM, and that was AdCon versus OPCON, which we'll talk about here in this mission execution. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. But AdCon versus OPCON, obviously on a joint IRT mission, it is an exercise. No one service component, regardless of leader support, has any administrative control over another. So, and again, we're also teaching this because we've seen it happen, okay? So I'm going to tell you another story. I'm really good at those. So if you are Army Reserve and you're leading a mission say in Tropicare, and some Air National Guard providers do something silly, you, as the Army Reserve, cannot administer LORs to those providers, okay? And by LORs, for my Navy, it's not letters of recommendation, that's letter of reprimand, okay? That's just a no-go, right? You are not in their chain of command. However, you certainly can let the program manager know, and the program manager will take that information and get it to their unit command, and then their unit command can deal with it appropriately. On that same note, there is a zero tolerance for misbehavior on IRTs. Units are only there for 2 weeks. We're in a joint environment, and there's a very high visibility on these missions. So when we start having issues with individuals, it just goes straight up to the program manager, and usually it's handled at a program manager level. So program manager to program manager, and the person goes home if it can't be handled at an even lower level.
And timing is critical on that. The reason I say that is because it can get systemic, meaning one person says, I'm not doing it, and then it starts to trickle down. So we have to know right then. If we don't, it causes a problem. We saw it in one of our missions this year. So 2 went to 4 and 4 went to 6. So, and that will affect your mission in the long run. So the quicker you get it to us, the quicker we can get those folks gone, and we'll start over again.
It drastically affects the morale and just getting stuff done. Usually the person has somebody else in their unit with them, and their unit chain of command finds out quicker than the program managers find out anyway, and they usually remove them at that point. But if it does get to the program manager level, we're usually cross-talking, going to their chain of command, and sending them home as quickly as possible, because of what it can quickly do on a mission, especially in a joint environment. And there's no time for it, right? We're all there to train. We just don't have time for any silliness. And we actually won't go into this as much tomorrow, but also if you have people that are starting to get in trouble, and again, I tell you this because it's happened, it's very important that it starts going up the chain of command pretty quickly. It doesn't want me to go next on the slides. So we actually had an incident. This was in Alaska. I won't name the service component on this one, but somebody went out and drank when they shouldn't have drank, because most of the missions are no alcohol, but we really leave it up to the mission OIC and the units that are on it. Some service components are no alcohol, period. Everything's different. But bottom line was, said person goes out to bar, gets drunk, drives, gets a DUI, lands in jail, and the program manager who was actually there sleeping in the hotel got a call from the Pentagon at 2 a.m. asking what was going on and why their guy was in jail. And believe it or not, the program manager did not even know. So they found out from the Pentagon before they even found out from the mission OIC. So just kind of keep in mind, these things are very high visibility. Obviously act accordingly. Make sure your units act accordingly and they're following
That's your final slide.
the rules.
That was it.
All right. Any questions? We'll get fully into mission execution tomorrow. That's where you're going to hit the deep dive and you're really going to get into reporting, etc. All right. No questions. Is it the service component breakout next? All right. So for the service component breakout, this is where you get to learn all about the very specifics that are tailored to your service component, because we all operate differently. We acknowledge and embrace that. But there's things that I can't teach you that your program manager can. So we're going to be dismissed by service component, starting with the Air National Guard. Follow myself and Colonel Adamich out the back door, and then Captain Machado is going to release the rest of you by service component to your locations, or Major McDonald, whoever wants to do it.